Welcome to the Banyan Edge Podcast. Here's your host, Charles Sizemore.
Welcome. I'm your host, Charles Sizemore, and this is the Banyan Edge Podcast. And today, you are in for a treat because not only are we talking about economics and finance, we're talking about sports. And to help me with that, I have brought on Chief Research Analyst Matt Clark, who, among other various tasks, is one of our data guys, and he's also our resident sports historian and sports statistician. So, Matt, welcome.
Thanks. That's quite an open. I don't think I've ever referred to it as sports statistician or anything like that, but I'll take it. Not a problem.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but earlier in your career, you actually were a sports writer.
I was covered everything from pro sports to small high school sports. I had the luxury of doing kind of everything in between, and really it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, a lot of travel, but got to meet some very interesting characters. But yeah.
I spend a lot of time pontificating about sports and bar stools, but I wouldn't really consider myself an expert at that.
I encountered a lot of those people too. So, and sometimes it'd be about what I saw at a game. Sometimes it'd be about what I wrote about a player or what I wrote about a coach. You get all kinds. One thing that is universal is that everyone is a fan of some sport in some form or fashion. And everyone likes to, as you say, pontificate about what their love is, whether they think it's good or bad, whether they think their team is bad or whether they think their team is great. That is a universal.
Or the coach. The coach is always a good punching bag, right?
That's probably the best punching bag out there is either the management or the coach.
It's like every dictator or king always had a prime minister, so they had someone to either fire or execute when things went bad. That's the coach, like that.
And that is no different. The coach is always the sacrificial lamb in any level of sports, whether you're talking about college football, because you see it all, and even assistant coaches.
But you turn the pro game all the way down to like peewee baseball, man.
It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. It makes and fans are just as furious and fanatical on any level. Just as an aside, not to get carried away, but I also I when I was much younger and could do it, I was an umpire for baseball, softball, and things like that. And I tell you what, the younger
I won't ask you to do your strike, voice, because it'd be probably
it was loud.
Your piercing.
It was loud. My voice already carries. I would call on one field, they could hear my strike calls on another. So, but the younger the age group was that I would be umpiring, the more vehement the crowd would become. So all those videos you see on social media about parents being absolutely insane when it comes to, it is all true. That is not made up. That is not scripted. It is all legitimate. It's happened for years.
My son plays on a competitive soccer team, like one of those that like travels the world and stuff. And I see the fanaticism firsthand.
It's insane. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, if you look just at I know we're going to talk about, soccer. I don't want to tease out, but if you look, there are, even here in the United States, there are fan groups for soccer clubs, football clubs that are absolutely fanatical, and they do these things. They're called tifos. These are the big things that on the fans' end of the stadium, they will raise this big cloth-like thing. Sometimes it's an insult to the other team. Sometimes, most likely, it's an insult to the other team. If
highly probable.
They chant. It's a great atmosphere. Don't get me wrong. It's probably. It's not England, it's not Premier League, but it is.
Well, you're also not likely to get your teeth knocked out in a hooligan fight. Certainly less likely.
No, you won't. And even if you weren't a soccer football fan before, I think things like Hulu did the series Welcome to Wrexham. This was the profile of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney's purchase of Wrexham, the club in Wales. I think that drew a ton of love and interest, if not just for Wrexham, but I think for the game itself. A lot of people followed that story. Obviously,
if Deadpool is doing it has to be cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is that immediate cool factor when Ryan Reynolds is involved. I feel bad for Rob McElhenney because he's actually probably more active with the club than Ryan Reynolds is, but Ryan Reynolds gets all the press. But it is what it is. But
he knew that going into it. That's why he partnered with him.
Anyway, but I think that really helped grow some love for the game here in the United States, which is where the game of soccer has kind of been lacking in terms of its popularity, because we have
and about that.
And there's your transition.
So
there's my
drum roll. Speaking of things that will generate interest in American soccer, of course, you are aware that arguably the GOAT, the greatest of all time, this is the equivalent of a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady in soccer. Lionel Messi, he just signed with Inter Miami, and he is coming to America. That is a big deal.
This is a groundbreaking deal. This is, even if you're not a sports fan, I think you will somehow in some form or fashion feel the gravity of what this actually means. And I speak on that aside from my passion for soccer, because it is my sport of choice. It is the sport that I enjoyed the most in terms of as a viewer. I enjoyed it whenever I got to write about it. That is my sport.
Well, Matt, just for the non-soccer fans out there, people that are still new to this, would you say that this is sort of the equivalent of what Michael Jordan did for basketball? A lot of people that were just casual fans at most, they were vaguely aware there was a league, that they might have known there was some guy named Larry Bird or Magic Johnson. But then Michael Jordan comes along and everyone wants to be like Mike. I mean, everybody roughly our age grew up on the playground trying to ball like Jordan. I mean, it's a joke, of course. We were ridiculous. I would love to have video footage of how bad we were. But, everyone wanted to be like Mike.
I think instead of that, this would be the equivalent of Michael Jordan in his probably second go around with the Bulls, deciding to transfer and play in the Italian basketball league. And the reason why I say that is because, in the US, the NBA is massive. I mean, it is huge. It does have some footing in Europe, but it's not nearly as popular as, say, soccer. So when you have a player of that caliber go from the absolute pinnacle of popularity and height and where
recently
the sport
won the World
most,
Cup, I might add.
And then you take him and then you insert that player into a league that is still very popular, but not nearly on the level of where he's coming from. I think that's a more accurate depiction of what this looks like. I mean, we as Americans, we always had Michael Jordan. We always had Michael Jordan on television playing for the Bulls. That was always something that we had. We haven't always had Lionel Messi. We certainly have not had the luxury of being able to see Lionel Messi play on American soil. And I think that is probably a more accurate representation of what this is like. It would be, like I said, like Michael Jordan going from the NBA and going to play in the Italian league, or going to or LeBron James, if you want to look at it as a more recency. LeBron James leaving the Lakers and saying, you know what, I want a new challenge. I'm going to go play in Greece. And then what he will do for that sport in Greece will be massive. And then they will have a ripple effect across the entire European continent. The same thing happens here with Lionel Messi. You have who I would consider, and this is not an indifference to those who are, of my age, who watched Pele play, the original Ronaldo from Brazil, not Cristiano, the original Ronaldo, both Ronaldos, if you will, who watched them play.
Pick a Ronaldo, and just pick one.
Any Ronaldo from Brazil, not Portugal, but from Brazil. From Gattuso in Italy, Zinedine Zidane from France. Anyone who grew up watching those players, that they were great players of their time. But if you're looking for a generational talent who has transformed the game from day one, I think you have to look at Lionel Messi as that player. And even though he is not young, he's going to be, I think, 35 years old. He's not a spring chicken, but there is a lot to be said about, the fact that he still plays. He still has game. He's not, he's not a wheelchair on the sideline looking for his coaching gig. He's playing, and he's playing well. I think in Ligue 1, when he
was the man of the match in the World Cup. I mean, it was,
that's the thing. I mean, we're 6 months.
The top dude in the World Cup, whatever that title was.
We're 6 months removed from him leading Argentina to win a World Cup. He won 2 Ligue 1 titles with Paris Saint-Germain in France, his most recent club.
Four Champions Leagues with Barcelona.
And I'm just talking about just recently. So to suggest
7 Ballon d'Or awards, which for the uninitiated, that is roughly the equivalent of like MVP. Yeah,
that is the NBA MVP. The Ballon d'Or is the pinnacle of football awards. But I mean, even just recently, like I said, PSG just won the Ligue 1 title. And part of that, he's played with Neymar and Neymar Jr. and Mbappe, Kylian Mbappe. He still managed to not only notch goals, but provide assists, and in the double digits. So we're not talking about, he may be getting up in age, but he's still got a lot of game left. And I think, the prospect of having not only that name recognition come to Inter Miami, but also have that potential for a club like Inter Miami, who, by the way, is in last place in its conference right now. So this is, even more storyline to go with it here. I think is huge, and there's a ton of spidering storylines here to talk about. You could talk about the impact South Florida has had on the sporting industry this year. You have the Miami Grand Prix with over 270,000 people in attendance. You've got the Florida Panthers, which are just down the road in Sunrise. They're in the NHL finals. You have the Miami Heat, are in the NHL, are the NBA finals. We won't say anything about the Marlins because they're the Marlins, but they are in second place in the NL East. Take that for what you will. And then the other Miami Dolphins, which, they made the playoffs last year, so they're on the rise. So, there is that. But I think to focus this, I think needs to be more on just the impact of the name Lionel Messi. It is huge. And to list off his accomplishments is something that we could spend hours talking about all the things that Lionel Messi has done over the course of his career. But there is obviously
there's Wikipedia for that. We won't do that to him.
Yeah, you can research that on your own because they are vast. But I think we look at the benefits here and clearly the biggest impact here right away goes to Inter Miami. This is a club that was started, is co-owned by David Beckham. If you're unfamiliar with who David Beckham is, one of the original Manchester United players of the class of '96. Played for Sir Alex Ferguson, won Champions Leagues, won league titles in the Premier League, did great things, came over, actually played.
Legendary soccer player, married to one of the Spice Girls.
Married to a Spice Girl. If you're not soccer inclined, he is married to Victoria Beckham, who was a Spice Girl. But interestingly enough,
she's now a Spice woman because she's more mature now. So
some would say. He actually moved from Europe to the LA Galaxy, and part of his deal to come to play in MLS, which was really fledgling at the time, was that he would get an ownership cut or a reduced stake in an ownership at a later time, which coincidentally he took, and he paid a $25 million franchise fee for Inter Miami. The franchise fee is more along the lines of 100 to 125 million, so he paid a discounted rate. And he, as a co-owner with the Moz brothers of Inter Miami, fast forward to today, and now he has leveraged that to bring on the world's greatest player into Inter Miami. And I know we're going to talk about the deal for Messi here in just a second. But so I think Inter Miami, this obviously is a huge move for Inter Miami, who is still actually without a coach. They actually parted ways with Phil Neville about a week or so ago.
I'm sure they had people forming a queue to bid for the job at this point.
Ironically, the leading candidate for the job is a gentleman named Tata Martinez. He is the former coach for Atlanta United. He also was the Mexican national team coach and was recently let go by the Mexican national team. He is a great coach. He's actually coached Argentina. He's coached Messi. He was an assistant at Barcelona where Messi was. So Martinez he is the odds-on favorite to become the new head coach for Inter Miami. And if that's the case, that's just, it's not as big as of Messi, but you put that in there, and Tata Martinez is a fantastic coach. It was, it would be like getting Bill Parcells to come nice. and coach. So you think of it that way. But and there's other benefits here as well. I think you have to look at the exposure for MLS, Major League Soccer. That is huge. Every game, as I read this morning actually, or last week, and right immediately after the signing was made kind of official per se. No contract's actually been signed yet, but every Inter Miami match anywhere for the remainder of the 2023 season is sold out. You can even if Messi's not playing, his earliest potential time to suit up and play for Inter Miami isn't until July 21st, when they play Club Lyon in the League Cup. So even before that, those matches are sold out, and not sold out at a $29 per ticket typical price tag. We're talking about $400, $500 for nosebleed seats to see a game where the player they're coming to see isn't even there. So you already see the immediate impact in terms of visibility for Inter Miami, visibility for the entire league. You've got merchandising, which is just going to be ungodly. I'm
sure I'll be buying a couple Messi jerseys for my kids.
Adidas will not be able to crank out Messi jerseys for Inter Miami fast enough. They won't. They will not be able to keep up with demand. You have the possibility of other players coming to Inter Miami to play. There's already been rumblings of Sergio Busquets from Barcelona, who's on a free transfer. He could be coming. You have another player, and I completely just lost his name, plays for the Uruguay international, played for Liverpool and Barcelona. He's now at Grêmio in Brazil. Great player. He bit an ear in the World Cup. Luis Suarez, that's right. He has already told Grêmio that he's done. He's coming here. Again, media reports, a lot of fascination. But again, the potential now for David Beckham and Jorge Mas, the co-owners of Inter Miami, to bring in quality players now outside of the American scope is huge. And the allure is you have South Beach, you have Miami, which is kind of the Latin American capital of the world, if you will. So drawing quality Latin players from Europe or from South America is not going to be hard at all, especially
it's a short plane ride from South America.
What you have to feel bad for is the current roster of Inter Miami, because there's going to be some turnover and there's going to be some players that won't have jobs. So that's that happens. So you see Inter Miami, MLS, Adidas. Adidas is going to be a big player here, but I think there's one big, if you're looking at it from a trading aspect, and I know that's kind of the point of what we want to talk about, there is one company that trades that has the potential to be a very big benefactor of this Messi signing. And it's one you wouldn't really think of. I mean, if I asked you right now, I know but if I asked you right now,
might be named after a fruit.
It is. It is Apple. And there's a simple reason behind it. First, you have to kind of understand the structure of Messi's potential deal to come to Inter Miami. First and foremost, he turned down almost $1 billion to play in Saudi Arabia. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. Number one, I don't think Lionel Messi is a very quiet individual. He's not a flamboyant personality. He's not your typical European football player. He's not Zlatan Ibrahimovic or anything like that. He's not LeBron James. He's remarkably level-headed, like to a shocking extent. Very level-headed, very quiet. He makes his statements on the pitch, not in the press. So I think there was a bit of a turnoff there to go to Saudi Arabia. Number one, there's not much of a challenge there. You have the PIF, the infrastructure fund for Saudi Arabia. That now owns the word on the street
was just his wife really wanted to go to Miami, and he's at a stage where he's like, I've already accomplished everything I want to accomplish. Why not go to Miami?
For sure. I mean, he already has he has a penthouse in Miami. He's vacationed in Miami. It is rumored that his wife and children love Miami. Why wouldn't you? They don't speak English. Lionel Messi speaks very broken English. So, it would be a very natural fit. That's not an impediment
in Miami.
No, not at all. In fact, it's actually a benefit. It's a benefit because it is the Latin American capital of the world per se. And the Latin population is massive. And it's not just the Latin population is much different than the Latin population in Arizona or New Mexico or Texas. We're talking about these are people that are coming from South America, Central America, the Caribbean.
I'm actually recording this from Lima, Peru right now. And my joke is that somehow the entire 35 million person population of Peru has an uncle in Miami. Sure, I don't know how that works. I don't know how the math works out there. That would seem to be a mathematical impossibility, but I'm convinced all 35 million Peruvians have an uncle in Miami.
For sure. But the thing is with
or
Messi,
maybe Fort Lauderdale, maybe
a stretch. But maybe only because they didn't want to live in Miami.
Miami's expensive. Yeah, Fort Lauderdale was more
a little cheaper in Broward County. But I mean, so yeah, you have, and obviously he wanted to go back to Barcelona where he became famous, but they couldn't make a deal to go together. There's a deal in soccer that most clubs have to follow, not here in the States, but it's called financial fair play. And basically it puts all these clubs on equal playing fields in terms of how much they spend. Because back in the 80s into the 90s, clubs were spending ungodly amounts of money to bring in players, but it was only a select few who could afford it. It's kind of like baseball here in the States. You have the Yankees that are big spenders, the Mets that are becoming big spenders, but then you also have the A's and the Royals who don't spend any money at all. What financial fair play does is it puts all those teams kind of on an equal playing field. It doesn't relegate how much you can spend. It only relegates how much you can spend based on how much you bring in. You basically can't spend more than you make. And Barcelona has had a real hard time getting to that even keel. So there was no way they could register a contract with Lionel Messi. And if they did, they're going to have to cut players or reduce player salaries. And Messi very candidly said, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be the one responsible for telling another player he can't make what he should make. And I think that speaks volumes. So and plus, I think with Saudi Arabia, you have some rights issues. You have the PIF, the infrastructure fund there that's run by the Saudi prince. It now owns the top four teams in the league, so there's not much parity there. It's really not a challenge for him outside of just playing in the heat. So that really left the only deal to be Miami. Now, obviously, Inter Miami and MLS, they have spending caps. Teams cannot go out and just spend gobs of money on players. It doesn't work. That's not the financial model. They tried that with the USL and it failed. But back when Pele and all those players were coming here, Jurgen Klinsmann, things like that. So one of the rules they had for MLS was we're going to have a cap. So obviously Inter Miami could not pony up $4 million a week to pay Lionel Messi. So you have to get creative. And how do you do that? Well, you have to find incentives. You have to find other partners that are willing to help offset what Messi would make being paid directly by a team in another revenue stream. So it's not official, but the common knowledge in terms of the contract is that Lionel Messi is going to get a revenue share with Adidas, which is massive. That is a huge deal. That is like a sneaker deal with Michael Jordan. If you watch the movie Air, it's very similar to that. Basically, Lionel Messi is going to get a percentage of any and all jerseys sold or gear sold that has Lionel Messi's name on it, and that is massive. That is not a cheap chunk of change. That is more than you might think. And obviously, he's going to be paid by Inter Miami. There's discussion that he may get the same deal that David Beckham did, and that is he will get a reduced rate, either the ability to own part of Inter Miami, which he's expressed interest in doing, or a reduced rate to own his own team somewhere else. But the deal here, what brings Apple into the mix, is that another part of the deal, and probably one of the stronger points here, is that he also will have a revenue share deal with Apple. Now, you might ask, well, why? Because are they sharing?
Apple signed a rather large deal to stream soccer.
That's it. Apple TV has the exclusive rights to the MLS, and they paid $2.5 billion to secure those rights just recently. And it's a 10-year agreement, and it is big. And Apple at the time, Apple made what they thought was a very dangerous bet on MLS, because again, it's soccer. It's probably the fifth most popular sporting league in the country. But I think
it is absolutely number 5. It's below football, basketball, baseball, and hockey, and
exactly,
and with no prospect in the immediate future of surpassing any of those.
Not until now. I think you will see it surpass. So Apple, Tim Cook's bet on this deal is now paying off, and so part of the deal is that any subscribers to the season pass, the MLS season pass, which is about $50 a season. I think it's now down to $40 a season because we're already into the season. Lionel Messi gets a cut, and it's an absolute brilliant deal because Apple TV is a global platform. You didn't have people buying MLS season pass in Europe. They will now.
No, they will now.
You didn't have people in South America buying MLS season pass. They will now. They absolutely will now. And if you think, and Apple TV did a thing where some of the games were free, so you didn't have to sign up. Now They may still have free games. Inter Miami will not be one of them.
Inter Miami will not be one of them. Absolutely,
it will not be one of them. So this adds an interesting component. So what the MLS and Inter Miami was able to do was not only say, okay, we'll pay you, but we've also got Adidas on board and we have Apple on board that will provide you revenue share. But again, at the end of the day, for Lionel Messi, we talk about money. It wasn't about money. This was not a move for money. If it was a move for money, he wouldn't.
He's got more money than he can ever spend already. He did this because he wanted to.
He would have taken the cash and gone to Saudi Arabia and played, with Cristiano Ronaldo, done whatever, and just played out his days. This was not about money. This was about a challenge. Every great athlete wants a challenge. They want to be challenged continuously. They're not happy just doing the status quo. And the challenge here is you're going to a brand new league that you've never played in, one that struggles. It doesn't struggle, but I mean, in comparison to the other 4 major leagues here in the States, it struggles. And a team that arguably as well struggles. I mean, the playoffs last year, they're dead last right now. They've got, I think, 16 points in 15 matches. That's not good. You get 3 points for a win. So that gives you an indication as to how Inter Miami has performed. So there's a challenge here. Plus, the family loves Miami. But I think what they've done here is they've been able to put together a very competitive, very lucrative, but more lucrative than I think you might think. And the interesting part about this, in terms of from an investing perspective, earlier this week, Apple had their developers conference. Much ballyhoo, what's new? What is Apple going to release new? It happens all the time. People love it. Stock usually does very well. Well, it didn't this year. No. They unveiled their Vision Pro, which is their virtual reality headset. And initially, I tracked this over,
but it's actually
minute by
not.
minute.
What was the word they used? It's not a virtual reality headset. It's an immersive computer.
It's immersive. It's a wearable computer.
It's a computer you wear on your face.
Yeah. and there was a lot of confusion about it, even when Tim Cook was up and talking about it, things like that. There's still a lot of confusion. The stock went up a little bit, but to the minute, and you can look at this on a chart if you look at history, to the minute, it's about 2:00 Eastern, I think. To the minute when the price was announced for the Vision Pro, which is at a robust $3,500, the stock price dropped 1.2% to the end of the day. I mean,
it's rare that Apple whiffs on a product launch. They kind of whiffed on this one.
And they did. They have great marketing. This was not one of their greatest achievements. Now, the interesting part of this is fast forward to Wednesday, Thursday. This is when the rumblings are starting to come about Messi joining. This will be Wednesday. Nothing's really finalized until towards the market close. Apple stock is down on Wednesday, down about 1.7% over the week. And obviously, a lot of that on the heels of their disastrous launch. On Thursday, interesting enough, when now this news has started to settle, the Athletic reports, it's rev share deal, things like that. Apple stock goes up 1.2% from that low the day before. So I mean, you can't tell me,
multi-trillion-dollar company now.
Yeah,
and that moved the needle.
It carried the Nasdaq to a 1.1% gain on the day. Because if you look, a way to tell if larger holdings are carrying an overall index is look at the equal weighted index, the equal weighted ETF to trade for the Nasdaq, which is like QQQE. That ETF, I believe, was down on the day, but the Nasdaq was up 1%. I think that
the cap weighted Nasdaq,
the cap weighted Nasdaq was up, I think, 0.2%. What that should tell you is that the rest of the market in the Nasdaq 100 is carrying the Nasdaq. Apple is, and Apple's a big enough company that it'll do that. And so you have the signing of Lionel Messi, the partnership with Apple, and that is carried off into, pushing the Nasdaq up to highs.
Apple for a while has been talking about wanting to be more of a media company, and Apple TV has really not gotten much traction. Apple TV is definitely, Netflix and Disney and Amazon are head and shoulders above Apple in media. This potentially changes that.
It does. And the other thing that Apple kind of struggles with in terms of launching Apple TV is developing movies and shows that people want to watch. Obviously, you've got the writer's strike, which is a big hindrance now. But, Apple TV was kind of already behind the 8 ball in terms of trying to get new series, because they don't really go out and license shows as Netflix does. Or
they don't pay nearly. Yeah, they don't dedicate the budget for it. But
they focus more on original content. which is great. I mean, that's a great model to have. The problem is that you actually have to keep pumping out original content as a Disney Plus does, with having the Star Wars series, the Marvel series, and things like that. Apple TV has kind of lagged that, which is why you've not seen a lot of excitement around Apple TV and Apple TV Plus, the subscription service,
until now.
And it's interesting that the fifth most popular sporting league in the country is going to have the potential to carry Apple TV to new heights. That's just something that you would not have thought of going into it. But now I think
interesting times.
We do. So I think is Apple tradable? Is it something that you should look at for your portfolio?
But Matt, let's talk about that, because
sure,
you and Adam Odell run the stock power rating system. Like that's your in-house stock rating system. Let's look at that. I did pull the data for Apple. It does rate a bullish 64 out of 100.
It does.
In your rating system, anything over 60 is considered bullish. It's something that your historical data suggests it's in a good position to double the market's return over the next 12 months. So that's a strong statement. And the data is of course always backward looking.
Correct.
None of the data that is used to compile that score is taking into account Apple's potential media success here. So I think if anything, Apple's score is probably understated here.
I think it is.
That is interesting.
And the other thing is if you look at that score on the whole, obviously Apple gets hit by its size. And, it is a big company. But outside of that, in terms of its other factors, it still rates very well. It's got good momentum.
It rates exceptionally strongly on everything except for size and value. It rates. It doesn't rate so great, but it rates exceptionally well on everything else.
Exactly, and those are the things. I mean, size I can kind of look past a little bit. Adam and I, we look at all 6 of the factors that make up the stock power rating system, and they're all equally important. But when you look at a company like Apple, you automatically go into that knowing that its size is going to be a bad score. Sure. So if you take that out, does that mean that Apple is a bad investment? And the answer is no, it's not. It's got strong momentum, very low volatility. Its value is a little off, but if you look at the broader tech market,
it's one of the highest quality companies in the world, and that quality is driven by its profitability and its balance sheet strength.
Exactly,
it's rock solid on that.
Its returns on assets, investment, and equity are above par with the rest of its industry. The company continues to churn out profits. I mean, Tim Cook's not a dummy; he knows how to make money.
Yes, he does.
And this company doesn't struggle.
Apart from computers you wear on your face, apparently that may be his one whip so far.
Yeah, but on the broader scale, I mean, and Apple, even though it's a big company, it still has the ability to pivot. You look at, semiconductors and things like that. Obviously, they were getting semiconductors from China.
Think about how many times they pivoted. This is a company that started making computers that were really losing out to Windows machines. I mean, the Macs were really not a popular ecosystem. Michael Dell famously said, if Apple wants to do its shareholders a favor, they should just go out of business and return cash to their shareholders. Boy, did he live to eat those words. Apple reinvented itself first with the iPod, then the iPhone, and then to a lesser extent, the iPad, and then wearables like the earbuds you're wearing. And those are Apple earbuds, right?
They are. I'm actually on a Mac laptop, and I have my Apple Watch.
You do have the watch.
I have my iPhone.
So you're a walking.
I am an Apple nerd. Here. I am an Apple nerd. And that was before.
But this shows you like how Apple keeps reinventing itself. I mean, the Apple Watch is no longer a new product. It's 7 years old now.
Yeah.
But that they basically made wearables cool, where before that was nerd stuff, man. Nobody wanted to. I mean, you would look like the guy that would get the
big Casio
sign on his back,
the big Casio calculator watch that was.
Well, my mental image is like a guy from a 1980s comedy that would be walking around with like a "kick me" sign on his back, and I mean, like that's who would wear wearables, and now they're cool. Like it's a cool product.
Yeah.
And so them pivoting now into sports and media, I expect they will be successful. They haven't really apart from the face computer, which we'll just call that an aberration. They really have yet to whiff.
I think they still have a ways to go. I don't think they're there yet in terms of getting to where they want to be, and especially in the media side of things. They're still an uphill battle. There's still a lot of competition in that market. But I think Apple
But this is a major momentum changer.
This is a huge game changer for Apple. And I think, if you're looking at this from a long-term, perspective, not necessarily a buy and hold, but a long-term perspective, I think you could do a lot worse than Apple. And I think this investment into MLS, this investment into a player like Lionel Messi, I think is going to pay dividends, no pun intended, is going to pay dividends for this company down the road. So I think there's a lot of strength here, and I know Apple. It's a common company. Everyone knows it. Everyone has probably owned stock in Apple at one point or another. And I think that if you don't own it, and if you're looking for a long-term investment, you could do a lot
everybody
worse.
owns it. If nothing else, you own it via your S&P 500 index fund.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
but it's one of those companies. No matter how big it gets, they seem to keep finding a way to reinvent themselves. Well, Matt, on that note, we're actually at time, so we'll wrap this up. But thanks for coming on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I love this mixture of sports and money.
I get to geek. When I talk about sports and finance, the nerd hat just comes out, and it becomes almost unbearable to everyone around me. But
the enthusiasm jumps out of the screen. So
I appreciate the time. It was a lot of fun. I know we used to do this a lot before, and so it's nice to be able to get back in the saddle and do this again.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, on that note, thanks to our viewers for tuning in as well. And this is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Banyan Edge podcast. Please tune in next week. And until then, go out and make yourself some money.